and welcome to part 3 of our series on liquid fire. In the last 2 episodes, we covered doing transitions with liquid outlet, and for doing data transitions with liquid if and liquid spacer. We're going to be doing another type of data transition, this time with liquid bind. In this case, we're going to want to animate the change of monster. So notice it's within the same route, so liquid outlet doesn't really work. And at the same time, it's not just a spacing issue, and it's not an if statement. So we'll need to use liquid bind. So liquid bind has 2 different forms. It has the inline form, and it has the block form. We'll start with the inline form. So for that, we have something that's in handlebars, an attribute, and we can just say liquid bind. And now liquid fire has access to that and can change it. Now notice where this is. So it's within a span with the class of name. So we don't have to put our own separate class on this. In our transition, when we're using the transition, instead of using has class, we can use child of, and it matches with CSS selectors. All right, and then we can use any of the transitions that we have from other places. So I like 2 down in this case. And when we see it working, notice that the name is animating. So now it's on to our next property, the level. So we can put liquid bind here, and notice that these are both under the div with a class of monster card. So your first thought may be to just, well, they're both eventually children of the monster card. But unfortunately, it only does direct children, not grandchildren. So if we want any of them to animate, we need transitions for it. So we could make individual transitions, but I think this is a great time to use the use property. And we'll make this one fade. So there we go, we've got them animating. But what if we did to right instead of fading? All right, that's looking pretty cool. So far, this has happened fairly effortlessly, aside from that thing about grandchildren. But now this one gets more difficult. So if we put a liquid bind here, then notice that our page isn't showing at all. And if we look, it's because, well, we're inside this image source. And so that's not gonna play well since liquid bind sets up its own CSS. So what we have to do is use the block parameters of liquid bind. So here we go, and we close it off, and let's see what that gives us. Well, that's better than the whole page not loading, but our CSS isn't applying very well to it. And so this is not a great experience. So this is something to watch out for. Liquid bind creates its own HTML. I mean, all of the liquid ones do. And sometimes that can mess with your HTML and your CSS. So the way I found to get around this is to wrap the liquid bind around the entire card. So we can no longer nest under a class, so we have to give it its own class. So we'll call it liquid monster. And we'll have to re-indent everything and then close it out. So then in the transition file, we'll change this to has class. And instead of being nested under name, it is the class of liquid monster. And notice we don't have the dot before because that's implied with the has class. You only need the dot with child of. And we'll go ahead and have a to right because that'll look better. And let's see how this works. Uh-oh, it doesn't seem to be working. Why is this? Well, notice here with the liquid bind, which by the way, we don't need anymore. So with the liquid binds, they had a second argument, and that was what they were bound on. And this liquid bind also has to have one of those. And here it's bound on the model. So anytime the model changes, it's going to do the transition. There we go. So we can see the cards changing whenever we change the model. So this looks pretty good, but I want you to look closer. And to facilitate that, we're going to go ahead and give this a duration of 3 seconds. Plenty slow. So we hit this, and notice that it changes all the data before it transitions. But there's a great way to get around that. So the liquid bind helper, the block helper, it has an as statement. So we can call our new model, or new monster in this case. And so everything that we want to not have change instantaneously, but to have it change as the animation progresses, that we need to take off the new monster. So we're going to replace all these. And now we'll see the type of smooth transition that we are wanting. So in this episode, we showed how to use the liquid fire liquid bind helper in both its inline form and its block form. We also showed several common pitfalls, several ways that you might accidentally do it wrong, and how to get around those. So next time, we're going to talk more about the transition map. So we've talked about it in passing, and we've gone over a lot of the features when we've been working with the template helpers, but we're going to do a more comprehensive overview. I'll see you next episode.